seen other churches do or your church has done that we can do to reach out to our community? I mean,
well, I think there's, the partnerships that you've done. I mean, I think there's easy stuff we can do. Maybe build relationships with pastors and leaders. I feel like exchange pulpits is something that we've tried. Collaborative projects. I mean, I got a call the other day. I mean, I didn't initiate it. I got a call the other day from one of our pastors. He said, the township stopped doing the Memorial Day stuff. Let's do something together. Last year, they put a lot of effort into bringing people together. They had gospel music. They did some stuff like that, stuff that we could do together. Um, you know, sister churches is one of the ideas that maybe floated later on with the um, justice and equity stuff, where we find that maybe a church from one of our churches of color, and maybe we adopt them, and maybe change pulpits. Maybe there are other ways that we can collaborate. We can pray, share prayer requests, and do that kind of thing. In other words, build those relationships. I kind of think sometimes that when we don't realize this, but it goes together and it's consistent with the message. When we walk closer to one another, then we are moving closer to the Lord, right? I think I shared this before. I used to be so worried. You guys are newlyweds. I used to be so worried when we were dating, because I obviously was absolutely infatuated with my wife. I wanted to be with her all the time. That's not all I thought about, right? I was trying to be a good Christian, and I worried that those feelings were crowding out my devotion to the Lord. And so I was really jealous of, trying to, Lord, I love her, but I don't want to love her too much, because you know how that goes. Now, I know you can smile and laugh because it's true. I was naive about that. What the Lord was really telling me, or I wasn't hearing it very well, is listen, don't worry about loving her. In fact, you don't love her nearly enough. You need to love her more. In fact, your capacity to love me will be stretched if you learn to love her more, right? And so I think by walking closer to one another, however you do that, you guys are creative. You've done, collaborative work. I know you've done that. But those are just some of the ways that we can do that. And I have relationships too with pastors. Share ideas with, call. Will you pray for me? This just some of that. But trying to get the congregations to do it is more of a challenge, especially we have older congregations. We have people that are busy.
Yeah.
But we got to figure out ways of doing that. One of the ways might be reading books, and helping us understand sort of different experiences of people that are different than maybe our experiences being in rural churches, and maybe understanding one another better, educating ourselves, maybe through videos, books, and that kind of thing is another way of maybe making some baby steps in that direction. But those books, that book on unity actually has a number of practical ideas that would, that you could read and go through. Not all of them I recollect at this moment in time, but you can go through and look at some of those. Other questions? I'd love to answer questions. I mean, I don't have any good recipes. I'll be asking you in a minute about the cookies.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we'll have the no bakes, but maybe we'll have some other. But do you have any questions? I mean,
the other thing that was on my mind, and then I'll be quiet and I'll let other people talk, is that first been in my heart has been African American churches, and there's just 2 here in Anderson. But what's happened a couple times recently to me is I've stopped in Westfield, and there's a newer plant inspired church at the Church of God in Westfield, and it's a growing community. But there's a Hispanic Church of God, and there's a Hispanic restaurant right across the street. And I'm just thinking, can we just maybe, and I've seen a couple, I know of 2 people, I'll embarrass them, the 2 Karens have gone and listened to me, and they said, hey, it's pretty good across the street. Pastor Jason likes it. They've gone across the street and tried it. It's just, and I know we've tried Mexican or Hispanic food in our culture, but it's just like we just reach out and try to just take that one step, I guess, and they're right there across the street.
It's unusual to have Spanish Americans here in Middletown.
Yeah, it's a small town.
We have a group on the highway real close too.
Yeah. I mean, but I see it as the fact that it's right across the street from us. That's a God thing to me.
Yeah.
It's just like he put it right before us. It's simple. It's not hard, and so things like that, I think God puts us before. He makes it easy. It's hard for us at first, kind of like Jonah, if we have that attitude, but he'll put it right before us if we're obedient and just walking it. He'll give us, you don't even have to like Mexican food. It's not real spicy, right?
It's excellent.
But it's just God puts those opportunities right before it. If we just open up our eyes and open up our heart and open up our ears, if we'll walk in those.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I left Anderson. I work in Middletown, Ohio, and so when I left Anderson a couple years ago, I went back to Middletown. I wasn't sure what I was going to do, so I was a virtual teacher in the city school system for a year, and then ended up working as an ESL tutor there at Middletown, and that's what I'm doing now for my day job. And so we have several students that many of them are learning the language, and it's so exciting to be there and to be a part of. I don't know how spiritual it is to translate, the Pythagorean theorem and all that kind of thing, but it's so much fun to help, to be maybe a welcoming face, and they have so much to offer. I mean, some of my students are so artistically gifted. I mean, beyond high school students. I mean, it's just incredible, some of the artwork that they did, their drawings and things. And so, we don't know what folks have to offer us. It'll be the growing edge of the church, and so I just think that it's been a blessing to stretch and grow a little bit, and meet new people. I'd say it that way. They've enriched my life. Other questions? Yeah.
Do you intend to write a small book on your diary?
It's a good question. I mentioned the book. I wish I could just say. I mean, I didn't really even tell the story, but that diary is in my mind remarkable. I mean, it's a little red diary, a little red journal. I have it at home. I have a date marked at the end of that book. There was something significant that was supposed to happen, and I won't go into all the details, on a particular day in August the 25th of that year. And I had circled it, and I prayed, so hard for that date. And it was only about 30 years later, as I was had gone through a traumatic event in life, that I looked back at that journal and saw that date circled. And it's been 30 years. I long forgot about it.
Awesome.
But to see that made me think about the Lord differently. That He was guiding my steps, and He gave me that verse. He didn't know I'd need it 30 years later. But at the time, God's footsteps. No, I don't know if I'll write particularly about that. I've thought about writing an autobiography, but that's sort of a narcissistic move. But I don't want to be that guy. I mean, I can be that guy. I can be that guy. Don't let me become that guy. But I would love. There's stuff I've seen in ministry, stuff I've seen that just, and there's a lot in that book. Yeah, but there's others. I've kept a journal. My and pretty much my entire ministry. One of those journals we lost. My wife and I, most of you probably know this, we lost 2 infants. We lost a little boy in 1991. We lost a little girl in 2004. And she lived 39 days. I've got a manuscript written about the loss of Alina and of Jacob. And I've never been able to finish it. But But anyway, we had someone break into our house in 2008, and it was such an odd thing. We didn't know. I came home one day, everybody was gone, and I came home, the phone was off the hook. At the time, we had those, landlines. It was off the hook. Back window was open a little bit, and I thought, well, the phone's not in the toilet. We have 8 kids, so I mean, everything's probably normal, I mean, you know how little kids are. So I didn't think anything about it until the next day. I was supposed to take my son to get his driver's license. Went upstairs and our lockbox was gone. We were going through some things as a family at the time, so we didn't know if somebody in the family had taken it. And so we didn't know whether to report it to the police or not. But in that lockbox, there were 2 journals. One detailed the last day that our little boy lived. And they even had 2 little Q-tips where that was part of it. And then the other journal was a detailed account of my daughter's 39 days. And the only thing that was taken in that house was that lockbox. And they could have the key was in it. They didn't have to steal the lockbox. They could have looked and this is just papers and there was nothing of value in there. So I called my brother-in-law, who was a deputy sheriff at the time, and said, look, this is what happened to us. And he said, I'll tell you what happened. They probably got scared or something, but they would come in, people come in, they take pillowcases and they take anything they can find, cash, jewelry. None of that was gone, only the lockbox with the 2 journals. And so I was teaching at Anderson at the time, and my wife was confident, we'll get those journals back, but I was very confident that we wouldn't. And my brother-in-law said, I'll tell you where those journals are. They're on the side of the road somewhere because it's incriminating evidence. So they'll get rid as soon as they can of those materials. And I'm sorry about that, but that's pretty much how it happened. About 3 or 4 months later, I got a call from an investigator in the area. And they said, hey, we were serving a warrant and we found your diploma. Have you ever been burglarized? And I said, no. Yeah, in fact, I have. But really, I don't care much about the diploma, but there were 2 journals that were missing. He said, well, I didn't see any journals. So my brother-in-law called him and he said, would you look again? Those were very valuable. So they went over and looked again, and next to a burn pile, in the bottom of an old cooler, there were 2 journals.
Huh.
And so we got those journals back.
Awesome.
And so I write about that in a manuscript that I haven't published about our journey. But I wanted it to be honest and authentic. Too often we paper over, you know what I'm saying? We paper over stuff like that. And we just want to move right on. It was a devastating blow to our family. I'll often tell people I'm going to finish that book, but I'm waiting for a better ending. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because my wife really suffered, really hurt over that. And as Christians, we're not exempt from any of that. And so we try to paper over it and act, and we're not genuine and honest about stuff like that. There were nights that she cried, still can't sleep. She can't. That's been years. She once told me, she said, I have 8 kids, and the 2 that give me the most work are the 2 that aren't here. We actually have 10 altogether, but 8 that are living. I have 8 living kids, but the 2 that give me the most work, something like that, she said, are the ones that aren't here. There's guilt, and could I have done something different? And were we the kind of parents we needed to be, and all that? But I don't know how I got off on that, but yeah, maybe someday. If you'll buy the first copy, buy the first copy.
I'm waiting. I'll be waiting.
Yeah, I like to write. I haven't written as much because of my job. I have part of a biography of Horst Germany I've been working on. Horst Germany was a fascinating character. How many of you knew Horst Germany? Horst Germany was nearly beaten to death in Union, Mississippi, when he tried to build a Bay Ridge Christian college for African American ministers. He was on the watch list for the Citizens Council in Union, Mississippi in 1960, and threatened by the governor, threatened by the two sheriffs, and he told them basically, you go back and tell the governor, I believe this is a matter of religious freedom, but you tell him I want to obey God rather than men. And they came, 30 men nearly beat him to death in Union, Mississippi, in the same county. And 4 years later, those 3 civil rights leaders were arrested and killed, murdered, in Neshoba County, Mississippi. And he was nearly killed in Neshoba County by church people. They had a meeting in a Baptist church there. This is all church. That's where it gets disturbing. I'm not going to go to the second part of this, but there was a gospel that was being practiced back in them days that was real comfortable with the kind of violence and ugliness that's not the gospel we preach, is it?
No.
Or is it? Or is it? Or is it? That's what keeps me up at night. Really. That the gospel we preach is not enough different from that. That's not who we are. But anyway. Any other questions? Good question.
I'm looking forward to that book.
Okay. I'll get on it.
He's got about half a dozen books already. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
you can count on the first 6. The rest of you have to sell out to somebody else.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be happy if people would read this one. I think it's not perfect. There are things I would change about it. But it's a pretty good book, and I'm really happy with their promotion of it. I don't know if I told you this, but I saw that it made the Christian Century in their book issue. It was discussed, and for a Church of God pastor, that's a big deal, because most of our writers, we write for the Church of God, and we have some good writers, but we don't often break outside. But this book has enjoyed wide success. And the other one that you held up, that one really was able to cover a lot of ground. So if that's my wife, tell her I'll be home after a while. And I'll do the dishes too.
Well, were you blessed this evening? I was.